So we'll aim to go for an hour. If you have questions, please use the chat box, and we're going to try and answer as many as we can as we go. And I'll leave space after each of the speakers for questions. So yeah, I think the best thing is just to get going. So why am I doing this with you all? I was raised culturally Jewish, but as many of you on this kind of call know me, I'm not really practicing. I don't really go to synagogue. So it seems like quite a big thing to do. And I guess Passover is the story that always stuck out as me growing up in a Jewish family. And I think it's because the story is like so epic. I mean, slaves, plagues, fires, breaking free, and Disney and musicals love it. So if you haven't seen Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat or Prince of Egypt, I highly recommend them. And cut to 2015, and the refugee crisis really started to kick off. And it just felt important to me and a friend, Andrea, who's also on this call. Hi, Andrea. To have a space in our homes to bring Jewish and non-Jewish artists together. Hi, Noah, yay! I'm just saying why we're doing this crazy experiment. To bring artists, Jewish and non-Jewish, into our homes, experience a sort of messed up Passover together, and hold a moment and a space for migrant and refugee communities as the crisis got worse. And then this year, obviously, I couldn't do that, and I was really sad about it. And then speaking to Asylum Art, who are supporting the event, and that's Rebecca, who's with us, they really kindly said, do it, and we'll support it. So they've been helping us promote it and make sure all these speakers can be here with us. As it began to unfold, I could quickly see that this was becoming a global illness, and the idea of separating out the global south and the global north didn't make sense. But then lots of the things we're all being told to do, like wash our hands and isolate and go out once a day, these are not available to many, many people across the world. And I wasn't really hearing coverage of that. I actually still haven't really heard very much. So yeah, we're going to just talk about how our global refugees and developing countries going to cope with COVID. What measures might they have to fight it? What does the future look like for them? And what can we all do about it, even when we are so stretched at the moment? And then interweaving that conversation with these beautiful artistic performances so that we're experiencing this in lots of different ways.
I brought the poem that I have that I feel was most connected to your theme. So just to briefly introduce it, I was asked to sing some songs, to write a poem about someone called Woody Guthrie, who in the early 20th century in America, he became one of the biggest influences of artists like Bob Dylan. He wove political messages into songs that were folk songs. And he became incredibly famous because there were very few radio stations at the time, and millions of people tuned in week after week. And they picked up these songs so easily because they seemed so familiar, but each of them was charged with some activism. And when I was asked to write this song, I thought, how could I possibly have a connection? But you know, my own family, they're refugees from many different countries. They came to England about 100 years ago. And their stories were so traumatic that the only thing they felt able to carry, most of them, were their folk songs and their folk heritage. So this poem was my attempt to see if I could find a line between Woody Guthrie and his turning folk song to activism and the path that led him there, and the path for all the ancestors in my bones as refugees picked up the few things that they had and tried to find a safer place. And we'll start with a little song, which is a song that Woody Guthrie would have grown up hearing. And you're all muted as far as I know, so if you know it, you could even sing along.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, we sang the songs of childhood, hymns of faith that made us strong, songs that Mother Maybell taught us till the angels sang along. And will the circle be unbroken and by, Lord, by and by. There's a better home awaiting in the the sky, oh, in the... There was a boat that came to England. Winter 1899. My great-grandma reached the dockyard, safe now from her stepfather, cut off from her family tree, cast into the tumble of Whitechapel, where anarchists and atheists and holy men preach cheek to cheek along Brick Lane to stir the worn-out workers up from factory floors and sweatshops and the slums they slept inside. And on Friday night, scent of fresh bread, chicken fat, smoky candles in their sticks. She stood with the scattered, gathered in a circle round the light, and they had nothing much to eat. So they opened up their mouths and sang, belly-fired and spiced as kummel. The songs passed down to them in barley field and synagogue, the ones reworked on city streets. Seamstress rhythms rattled ancient liturgy. The threadbare room grew fat and full on melody, and perhaps the tunes were not precisely as they'd been in the beginning. Maybe the words were changed to match the purpose and the time, but they lit a wick of words from where they were to where they'd been to where they hoped to be.
And there's been a group of kind of Nobel Prize winning economists that have come out and said that, the G20 and the kind of global north and the countries with, more money do need to tackle this like globally in terms of supporting the global south, because otherwise the impact on, refugees and migration and also increased insecurity is going to be massive, because when people are desperate and have no other option, that's when they turn to kind of insurgency and all of the other kind of insecurity issues that have kind of impacted lots of different countries. So I think that there's definitely a need for kind of like global solidarity and an action plan that thinks outside of just national borders, which is really difficult when people are being so personally affected within their countries. Everyone's in their own bubble. It's really hard to see what's going on in the other countries. Media only reporting on what's happening in their own country, and it's hard to follow the news. It's all moving so fast, and even just to keep up with the kind of security information. Am I allowed out to the park? Am I allowed? What am I supposed to do? It's really actually hard to keep up with it. But one of our kind of concerns outside of like those kind of macroeconomic concerns is the use of lockdown in lots of these countries that have now become very militarized. And that's the kind of crackdown on civic space is really concerning, because we're an organization that's built on kind of protest and on collective action and using your voice and holding governments to account that way. And you're not allowed to protest in the street, you're not allowed to meet in groups of more than 2 people. And so even online kind of digital activism is being cracked down on, and coronavirus is being used as an excuse by lots of governments. So in Thailand, they've introduced a fake news law, which is good to stop fake news because there's dangerous health messages being shared. But they're using it to crack down on any kind of dissent and journalism. And it's a real shrinking of like civic space that we're really concerned about, and we're going to be monitoring that across 20 countries that have become quite militarized. I mean, Kenya included. Like the police are on patrol, and if you break curfew, they will either bribe you or they'll throw you in a quarantine house where you'll definitely get coronavirus. And it's the people that are breaking curfew are the people that can't afford to not work. And so, they're out driving their motorbike taxis, having their motorbike confiscated, being sent to a quarantine centre where they'll get coronavirus. And the lockdown doesn't help them, because that just means long term they're not going to be able to feed their kids. And even if they're going to get coronavirus or they're not, but either way they can't afford healthcare. So it's being dealt with really well in some countries and really badly in others, and we need to keep an eye on how countries are going to be increasingly kind of militarized.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll read this one called Fuck Borders. It's very short. The travelers of woods and waters, who left by foot and paddle, who formed horse and saddle, rudder and sail, forged steam and engine, and reach the holy grail of flight. So instinctive was collective strive to boldly go and yet go further. They went off-world, traveled off-planet. The forest spirit child in them, who saw no borders in the sky, the winged wandering wild within, is who we have ever been. In time, we'll wake to see these lines, these thin borders we have drawn as utter folly, and call out why and when and who and what the fuck. And the sister poem to that is called Fuck Borders. No, it's called Fuck Border Guards, sorry, who have been my nemesis for quite a while. This is it. Heavy booted and uniformed, the armed who man the borders of narrative and myth, who cast the war-torn and hungry as vermin, will say he reached too far, dared dream broader than his country, than wings could carry. That chant of his, that song of light was foreign, sounded like a battle cry, too much like jihad. Icarus's whole flight was ill-advised. The father should have known better. Nothing can be done. Nothing as he plunged. And it's a little bit of rewriting of the story of Icarus. One of the things in some of the explanations regarding the coronavirus that has come, that has become clearer is that it is because of the work we're doing as human beings, as these upright animals, mowing down various parts of the planet we haven't roamed into before, and how that unleashes pathogens into the air, which are toxic to the human body and creates viruses as such. And this poem sort of echoes some of those sentiments. It's called Fuck Humanity. And it begins nihilistic, but turns in the end. Fuck humanity, I want to bellow like a card-carrying champion of the nihilist society. Fuck all the ways even our most earnest, faithful, folded over, humbled down, deep, considered attempts at amending our venomous ills undoes itself. Think almond milk and California wildfires, nitrogen fertilizer and industrial food waste, factory emission limits and the trade in carbon offsets, free markets and exploitation, voluntary work and white savior complex, vegan avocado diets and deforestation, phones to connect our lowly spirits and block bodies in cold timelines. Fuck every single attempt. Our best bet is to annihilate our vicious selves, I want to bellow, as Ellie pushes her 3-year-old hand into the calloused cave of mine. Her fingers, frail as elderberry petals, flutter. She calls me down to the careful constellations blooming in the brown universe of her brimming eyes, and all I am folds over, humbled, deep down, reconsidering attempts at amending our venomous ills, even if it undoes me. I keep remembering this quote from Werner Herzog, and he says, the universe is monstrously indifferent to the presence of man, and how this might be nature's way of asking us to chill out, to sit down. And I think that is both frightening to think there is just chaos and we are lost in the chaos of it, but also humbling to think that nature might be wanting us to chill out a bit and slow down the pace of creation and communication and the noise. And I don't know, and for me, I find something hopeful in that reading of the current situation.
I just want to share a few things you can do because it has been quite a heavy topic. So I've got 5 top things that I think we could do, maybe one of each. So the first thing is, like, it's heavy here in the UK and in America and in other European countries at the moment. So you can maybe only get to these things when you can get to them. Now, a week, a year. Unfortunately, I don't think COVID and the refugee global crisis is going anywhere fast. So the first thing is spread the word, because I don't think the mainstream media are having the conversation we've had today. And so, yeah, we're going to send you a load of articles and podcasts and information, and then some version of this recording highlights will be on Facebook. So the first thing you can do is just have these conversations with other people. If you're an artist, this is number 2, the UN have put a call out for a creative response. And like Inu and I were just saying, maybe you don't feel that creative at the moment, but you might do soon. And so you can support artists and the UN who are trying to think of a creative way to share information. I believe that we are involved in the global refugee crisis, whether the UK wants to have that conversation or not. So we donate so much money, and we do so to stop people coming here. And whether you agree with that or not, we're involved. Your tax-paying money is involved. So speak to your politicians, like, what are they thinking now and what are they thinking in the future? And then the last thing is around supporting charities. So we're going to send you links to HIAS, to ActionAid, to Good Chance Theatre. So if you are in a position where you can financially donate, not everyone on this call now will be, then please do. But also we're going to send you links to amazing projects like Choose Love, where they're still collecting goods. There's a small group raising money for soap for camp in Greece. So it doesn't always have to be money, right? Like, give the things you can give. And I'll do proper thank yous at the end, but just a huge shout out to Asylum Arts for helping us today and for all the panelists. And Mo, it would be really, really lovely to hear from you.
خلاص